and Vugu Nayosi, Black Revolutionary Now. Just wanted to bring you this video on this Chinese supermarket in Abuja in Nigeria. And word is these foreigners, these Chinese immigrants, these racist, anti-black Chinese come to Africa, set up a grocery store in Africa, and wouldn't allow African people to go inside the grocery store. I'm going to say this again. Foreigners and immigrants, Chinese immigrants, comes to Africa and set up a supermarket grocery store and wouldn't let African people who allow them to come inside the country in the first place. They wouldn't allow African people to come inside their store to shop. Wow. Make it make sense. Check out this video and we will come back and discuss it.
In Africa, a Chinese supermarket has been accused of racism against locals in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Nigerians were outraged after they were denied entry inside the store for not being of Chinese descent. The West African nation's consumer watchdog has now shut down the Chinese market and summoned its owner. Our next report goes into detail.
Not a day goes by when China and its behavior don't make the news. This time, Chinese actions have sparked outrage almost 10,000 kilometers away. Residents in Nigeria's capital Abuja are enraged with the way they've been treated. A Chinese supermarket in Nigeria is at the center of controversy. The shop is located in a building run by the Chinese Chamber of Commerce in the Nigerian capital. The Chinese supermarket has been accused of racism by denying entry to African shoppers. After videos of the supermarket's blatant racism against local Nigerians went viral, the West African nation's consumer protection watchdog closed down the Chinese store. Officials of Nigeria's Federal Competition and Consumer Protection Commission locked down the Chinese supermarket until further notice. They also summoned the store's owner for investigation. So how did this instance of Chinese racism against Nigerians in their own country surface? It all started earlier this week. A group of Nigerians went to the Chinese Chamber of Commerce to shop from its supermarket. They were all stopped at the entrance by guards who said that people of only Chinese descent were allowed inside. And then the outcry began. Nigerian authorities have refused to reopen the Chinese supermarket. However, the racist attitude by Chinese towards Nigerians and Africans is nothing new. Reports highlight that Chinese social media is full of anti-African content. And despite calls for controlling racism on Chinese social media, Beijing has done almost nothing about it. Chinese racism came into spotlight even before the COVID-19 pandemic. Africans who were living in China became victims of Chinese racism repeatedly. Over the years, reports of Africans being treated unfairly by the Chinese have become far too frequent. It reached a point where governments had to intervene to douse the flames. And instead of facing the crisis, Beijing called the racism incidents a way to create animosity between China and Africa.
I want to say that if there are people who want to seize on an incident to exaggerate matters and sow discord in China's relations with African countries, that this is a doomed, futile effort. China and Africa have weathered many storms, and the cooperation has been successful and win-win. How relations are between China and Africa, and whether or not cooperation is good, African countries and the people of Africa know in their hearts exactly how things stand.
China's presence in Africa, particularly in Nigeria, remains massive. There are at least 10,000 Chinese living in Nigeria. and Beijing is credited for opening major ports and infrastructure projects in Abuja. However, China has openly engaged in arm twisting and discrimination against locals, and the most recent example is of the Chinese supermarket. As calls for boycott grow in Nigeria, it looks like Chinese racism has become a setback for Beijing's relations with Africa.
Yes, as you can see, these immigrants, these anti-black racist Chinese in Africa have the audacity to be on African soil and practice racism. Practice racism in Africa. This is how bold these people have become. But I have to say this, for far too long, you have African people who let all this anti-black racism from all groups of people go unchecked. So this is something that is not a surprise to me and maybe some people, because when we welcome foreigners into our land and they spree a whole set of anti-black hate and rhetoric, and the people of that land don't say anything and don't check those people right away, it emboldens people like that to continue. And this is how far this anti-black sentiment have reached. You think that African black people could go into China or any other group of people nation and set up a shop and tell them they don't want their people to come in and shop, only African people? You think that any other group of people would allow that to happen in their land, on their soil? So African black people in some countries on the continent have to take responsibility for that, because for far too long they have allowed all groups of people to come into Africa and disrespect African people in their own country. So this is something that we have to send a strong black message to anyone who comes into our land to say, we won't tolerate this nonsense. And the fact that, the owner of the grocery store is being, will close on the store and stuff like that, and the owner is being investigated right on the spot. They should have their visa or whatever papers they have revoked right on the spot and send their anti-racist behind back to where they come from. Because when you don't send a strong message like that, you embolden these people and other groups of people to do the same thing to you. When you don't check it, you have to check it as soon as it happened. Anything, and any anti-racist anything, inside of your country that you allow these immigrants to come into your country and they're gonna disrespect you? So knowing this situation here that happened, we seen so much of stories years ago of the anti-black hate from non-African people on the continent. So that's the reason why this situation here got to go so far, because African people allow this to happen. By the words of the great master teacher, scholar, speaker, Dr. John Henry Clark, he said, "We have no friends. These people who come to our nation, they come to enrich their people and not us. And we have to understand that if we're not doing business and trade on an equal level where we are benefiting the most, then we are being disrespected. So when other groups of people could come to your nation and give you deals that benefit and make their lives and their country better, what kind of respect you think they will have for you, even in your own country? So Nigeria, you gotta send a strong message to not only the Chinese, but the other groups of people who want to come into your nation and feel they could disrespect you on your own soil. So I just wanted us to bring that message to you. And yes, we see a lot of African countries, they're not gonna go for that. And I hope this story right here is an example of what we need to do as a race of people. And we can't allow no group of people to come into your homeland and disrespect you on any level. And Vugu Nayosi, Black Revolutionary Now.